So, Bill 96, of course, now officially has come into law, signed today, announced today. And, well, a lot of us have more questions, not less questions now that that's happened,
Mm-hmm.
including how's it going to be enforced? Heard from Simon Jolin Barrette today suggesting it's going to be staggered to some degree. Our next guest, Eric Maldoff, if you can believe this, because I just double checked the date.
Mm-hmm.
40 years ago, in 1982, he was, of course, the founder and first president of Alliance Quebec. He's been fighting for Anglo rights ever since. And Eric, we've had a chance to speak a few times since the Bill 96 topic came up, but here we are, the day when it's announced as, the new law of the land, if you will. But as I said, there seems to be more confusion, not less to confusion, as to how it's going to be implemented. What are your thoughts so far?
I think you've put it exactly right. It's a draconian law drafted with excess and with no clear idea of how these provisions are going to be implemented and what they're actually going to mean on the ground. The only thing that is certain is that it's enacting serious prohibitions on the use of languages other than French, and it goes so far as to prohibit two individuals in certain circumstances from even having conversations in a language other than French. So it's going to be a wait and see what they do for most of us. But that speaks to the flaws in the law, quite frankly. It's been a big show, but now the rubber's going to hit the road.
So as this begins to be, implemented and put into effect, I guess as historic Anglos, we're still supposed to have access to all the same services. However, we don't know how it's going to be determined whether we are eligible to receive those services. What's your understanding of how they're going to determine who is a historic Anglo and who isn't?
Well, again, you're hitting a sensitive chord, and the Premier and the government of Quebec has taken a bunch of public money and tried to disinform the public with full-page ads saying all sorts of things that aren't based in the law. The law never uses the term historic Anglo. That's something that the Premier found attractive. But what the law does speak of is English-speaking people who are eligible for access to education in English in Quebec. Presumably that's who he's referring to as a historic Anglo. How they're going to establish that if someone shows up at a hospital or a social service or government office, God knows it's going to be one heck of a mess. I suppose in certain circumstances, like when you're trying to get your driver's license, it may be easier to show up with papers. But in other circumstances, like for health and social services, it will be crazy.
Well, let me ask that question. I'm trying to understand if there's, in fact, a delineation there, because
Mm-hmm.
the government has gone out of its way to say when it comes to healthcare, for example, it's not going to be an issue. They said this over and over again. But when it comes, as you just described there, I don't know, getting some official documents from the government, just because you had been getting them in English, once this law or that part of it comes into effect, the fact that you're no longer considered a historic Anglo means you won't be able to get those documents in English even though you were before. Is that accurate?
And it's not entirely clear. It seems to me that the law is saying if the government always dealt with you in English in writing, then they can continue to do that. And the historic Anglo doesn't seem to come into play there. The historic Anglo comes into all those other circumstances where the government has not been doing something exclusively in English with you or corresponding with you, like health and social services would be a very good example. And there, a different rule would apply, which is the eligibility for English education. Now, the Premier is out there, and it's very important for people to understand this. The Premier is saying this doesn't have any impact on health and social services. Nothing changes. It's the status quo. That is, to his knowledge, false. It's really important to understand he is trying to put people to sleep. It's nice that he says that we'll hold it against him in the future when it doesn't hold up. But that's not what the law says. Not at all. And he's saying that because we've caught him on it. And we've pointed out that all the research in the health and social service sector says effective communication is essential to quality and effective health care and safe and effective health care. So that's out there. He can't refute it. So he's saying, well, nothing's changed. Well, that's nice. So we said to him, we've written to him, we've asked for meetings, we wanted to meet the Minister of Health and all this. No response, not even an accusé réception, no acknowledgement of receipt, nothing. And we have pointed out chapter and verse how the law works. They won't answer it. We just get these bland statements from the Premier, don't worry, nothing changes. Well, I'm sorry. We're going to have a big problem here. And I have a simple question. I really challenge the media to do this. I get a lot of questions. I think the Premier and the Minister of Education have to be asked a very direct question. If nothing is going to change because of this bill on health and social services, why do you not exempt them from the bill to avoid this confusion? The same question that the Collège de Médecins has raised. I mean, this isn't, one person voicing this. The Collège de Médecins, 30 health and social service affiliated institutions, 700 doctors, and this is a question. And they have to answer that question. And why would you be applying a notwithstanding clause if this bill doesn't affect health and social services? I know why it does. They've done it because the Charters of Rights say every person is guaranteed security of the person. And that's the basis upon which, if the health and social service system cannot deliver services in a timely way, the Supreme Court has already ruled in the Shauli case a decade ago, people are allowed to go elsewhere to get their service and charge it to the government.
Eric, can I ask you, as I hear you describe this, and we both sat here looking at each other when you said you sent these letters, you asked for a chance to make your case and didn't even get a notice that your letter had been received. Fair to say the most disappointing part of this entire bill is simply the fact that no one was there to listen to the other side?
I think it's actually the most shocking part of it. That essentially, as far as I can see, this was a predetermined outcome. The hearings were a sham. People have to understand this law affects every single aspect of society. That's unusual in legislation. Normally, it's more targeted stuff on specific subject matters. This is everybody's life. And when you look at the hearings where they invited 50 of their best friends, or 50 of their best friends, and there were 53 groups there, it was fellow travelers with the Parti Québécois, longtime separatists, and all the people who have been arguing, toughen it up. And did the Collège de Médecins get invited? Did the health and social service sector get invited? Did the professional orders get invited, like the accountants and the notaries and psychologists? Did they get invited to talk about how this law would affect the practice of psychology, the practice of social work? None of them were invited. And to the extent that, so we and others, and the Collège has issued a statement, and we have issued statements. You can look at our website for the Coalition for Quality Health and Social Services. All the correspondence that we've issued and the reasoning and the documents are there. And the challenge is to the government. This government did not want to listen, did not want to meet, and wants to ram through some ideologically based view of Quebec. It is really disconnected from the real world.
So how does this lack of communication, this lack of, consultation, in your experience, and as Aaron pointed out, you have plenty, how does this compare to previous governments, other governments, like even under Lucien Bouchard? Have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, never. It got close with Camille Lorrain, but Premier Lévesque stepped in and put his foot down. And he said, we're not going to use a notwithstanding clause. And he actually forced Bill 101 to be reopened in 1983 with public hearings, and he amended it to recognize a lot of the things that we have been asking for, like recognition of our institutions, bilingual status for them, eliminating French testing for graduates of Quebec schools, for the professions, a number of things. Or for jobs in the public sector, that is. So, he listened. This and Gerald Gonnet was there. There were people who wanted a dialogue. One good piece of news, and I really do want to convey this. The reason we're seeing these ads in the newspaper is that the government's on its heels. These are defensive ads. These are answering people who are saying there's a problem there, and they're answering them with deception and obfuscation and, frankly, disinformation. And that's because they're on their heels. Why are they on their heels? I would love to say it's because we did it. I think we've done as much as we can, but one of the things that's happened that we did do, we communicated rationally with thoughtful people in the French-speaking community. And in the last month, opinion has started to turn. If you read the French media and the commentators, they are now challenging the demographic data that the government has used to base this panic. They are mocking the government over the comparison to Louisiana and the threat that we're going to be coming that. There's an article now saying that in La Presse today by Michel Auger, saying it's time to revisit the notwithstanding clause and the conditions under which it can be used by the Supreme Court. And so what we're seeing is an awakening. And my experience with French-speaking Quebecers is that they have good common sense, they're good people, and they are not the enemy. The issue is to open the dialogue with them, to speak to our friends in the French-speaking community, and gradually people start to see that this doesn't make any sense.
Well,
and that's good news.
Let's just hope that's the case, because we are starting to see that sort of sentiment begin to shift
From
on the
some,
French side.
but some are still perpetuating the divide.
Well, let's hope it gets bigger and bigger. Eric, thank you so much. Appreciate the time this afternoon.
And thank you so much for speaking with me today and for the time.
Appreciate it.